All right, everybody, welcome back. Good afternoon. I've got more to say about Sataoa Laumea, and this time we're going to be talking about the player in terms of his skills, in terms of his attributes, in terms of what he brings to the table positively, and some of what he brings to the table negatively, and we see how we feel about him after the discussion is done. So, again, Laumea, right guard prospect. In my view, he is a right guard primarily from Utah. What can we say about him in the positive? First of all, I think there is something to be said for the fact that he built a lot of experience at two different positions on the offensive line. There are definitely times where we, as football fans, have to watch a player play one particular role for his whole collegiate career, and then we have to hope that they're going to be able to play at a high level in the NFL at a different position because we think they'll be able to do it. And there's also something to be said for being able to pull out your pull out a secondary skill set in an emergency. And while I really would not like to see Laumea at right tackle in the NFL, I think it doesn't suit him. I think that having to protect the edge is not to his benefit. I do respect the fact that he's done it before, and there is going to be some availability there in an emergency. It's better than not having it. And he built a lot of experience at both spots. He's not a stellar athlete, but he's a pretty decent athlete. And more importantly than that, if you look at the tape, he's got lots of experience playing on the move. Utah would use him to throw those blocks where you go right to left, where you start on the right side and then you're looping around behind the center to the left to throw a lead block or seal the edge, a seal block on like an edge defender to clear the way for the ball, or have him climb up to the second level and hit linebackers in space, or even go block out for screen passes. And he's familiar with it all. You're not asking him to do something that he hasn't done before when you have him do that stuff. So that's good. He's capable of hitting targets moving laterally, parallel to the line of scrimmage, and when he's climbing up to the second level vertically and hitting linebackers or maybe even defensive backs. So he is capable of doing all the different move things that you need from an offensive lineman. This is not a situation where he's going to come in and just prove himself completely incapable of doing it, and he's going to be completely lost on some of your plays. So I will admit there are definitely plenty of players out there who have more athleticism than him, but he has the skills we need. He's got good footwork when he gets into the position for blocks. He understands things like angles. He understands how to hit combo blocks. He understands how to hit those blocks in space. It's not perfect. I've seen better, of course. There are players out there who do it better than him, but he does generally seem to have pretty good footwork, and he in space looks comfortable and it looks natural to me. He understands how to use his hands to control defenders. He has strong hands and he's able to guide players where he wants them to go. He's able to push them back with his hands. He's able to win the engagement early with his hands. So that stuff's pretty good. His upper body strength is enough to handle power rushers without getting his legs involved sometimes. His upper body strength allows him to win without necessarily having to lean on his anchor. Not against the elite power rushers, of course, but he's got some upper body strength there as well. And he's also got leg drive. As a blocker, he has the leg drive to push a hole open. You can see it on a lot of plays. I was watching some stuff where he's going up against nose tackles, some pretty good players, and he's just pushing them out of the hole. In the run game, he can move people. And I think that's kind of to me what Laumea represents. He represents versatility and the ability to do a bunch of different things. He mostly played zone in college, but he could do gap schemes if he needs to. If he needs to do gap-based blocking, he could do it. He has strength, he has footwork, he also has movement skills, he also has leg drive. He's kind of a jack of all trades. And I think it would be fair to kind of call him a master of none because I don't think he's elite in any area, but whatever you're trying to do offensively, he's going to be able to fit in. And there's definitely something to be said for that. He seems pretty smart and cerebral in handling more complex pressure packages and twists. He'll have these plays where he blocks multiple guys on the same play. It's not like Christian Haynes, but it's notable. It's worth noting. He can eat bull rushes and not lose his anchor with a pretty good degree of reliability. Although there is definitely some knockback, and we'll talk about that more later. Sometimes he just barely hangs on to win the rep, and it's a close call, and you can definitely feel like when he makes it to the NFL, is he going to be winning these reps the way he's winning them now? His punches are nice and firm, and he's got pretty good timing to maximize impact. His hand usage is not perfect yet, but it's pretty good for a rookie, and I think that he will be able to improve in that area. That's something where you can get coached up and improve. He's got an okay mirror. He's able to mirror pass rushers laterally to handle speed. Now, I do want him at right guard where he'll very rarely have to deal with a speed rusher, so I do want to minimize that part. But he was able to make it at right tackle for 2 years without being so bad he got forced off the field. So I don't want to diminish that, right? If he was really bad at right tackle, he would have been benched or moved back, but he wasn't. So he was just good enough to keep his job, including on one team that had a really good offense. That 2022 Utah team was elite offensively. And final point I want to make here is many of his issues over the last 2 years will be resolved if he bumps back inside. So when I'm looking at Laumea as a player, I am seeing the issues with things like speed rushers, some of the issues with oversetting, which we'll get into in 1 second here. And I note them because they're noteworthy, but I'm also very much aware of the fact that if he's at right guard, oversetting and giving up the inside is not going to be nearly as big of a concern. So understand that. So some of the cons that I listed out for Laumea, his arm length is passable, but still well below average for NFL guards. Frequently oversets against speed rushers and opens up his inside. You can see him kind of scrambling to protect the outside, and the smarter rushers know how to play that against him, where they just cut back inside, and he just leaves it open because he's trying to get out to the edge so quickly because he's not super quick laterally. One issue with his hand usage is keeping them too wide, which exposes his chest. And combine that with his arm length, which is just kind of okay. And he loses some reps because the defender just gets into him and there's not much he can do about it. He doesn't have the arm length to overcome it. And he keeps his hands too wide when he's setting up to pass protect. And he does get pushed around on some plays because of that. That's kind of the same thing Christian Haynes does, which I do think is fixable, but it is worth noting at this point in time. He does have a tendency to start a block well and then fail to sustain it. He gets into his guy, he's throwing the block, it looks good, and then he just kind of slips off. And his guy can still go make the play potentially. So his sustain does need some work. I've seen it be good in some games though. So it's there. Technically speaking, if you want to be literal, he never had a good season in college. Just using PFF as kind of a benchmark here. Most recent year, 65.4. That's not a good season. That's a slightly above average season. 57.6. That's I'd say slightly below average season. 68.2. That's close, but I'd still just call it above average. 59.9 is about average, and 60. Well, this doesn't even matter because he played 2 snaps. So technically speaking, if you want to be literal here, he's not had a good college season. So it's always a little bit intimidating to look at a player who wasn't even good in college. He was occasionally above average. And then say, oh, he'll be good in the NFL. So this will take some time, and it's going to take some understanding on our part to grasp the fact that it was contextual and it wasn't really his fault all the time. Struggles a little bit with leverage. He is a little bit taller than the average guard, although he's not critically tall, but he needs to learn how to sink his hips to win leverage. Sometimes he loses because guys get underneath his pads and are able to push him back because of it. So that's something he's going to have to work on. And sometimes he bends at the waist into contact, which leaves him weak to some counters. Sometimes it results in him slipping off his man and ending up on the ground. Again, these are technique things that should be relatively fixable. The things that aren't quite as fixable would just be some of the physical limitations and his arm length, of course. There's nothing you can do about that. So, That's what I saw with Laumea. Pretty good all around. There aren't that many areas where I think he's like critically bad. Just a few technique things he needs to clean up, and I think he'll be a viable NFL starter even, especially at right guard. Right guard is the least difficult to plug in position in the NFL. So um, I would say that based on the list of pros and cons, Laumea is a pretty good pick. I think that the value is there. I think that I don't know exactly where we're going to put him, but I do think stacking up interior offensive linemen was a good idea. And we got one more video on this guy. It's just going to be taking a look at some of my notes from the tape I saw, and then we are going to call it good with Sataoa Laumea. All right. See you guys a little later today. We're going to go over some notes. We're going to talk a little bit more about this guy, and then we're moving on to the last couple of guys. Should be starting tomorrow. See you guys later.